All right, so this is a little bit of an icebreaker talk. It's actually going to be a live Vue team personality quiz. So by the end, you should be able to know which Vue core team member, at least the ones that are here, you have the most in common with, and hopefully learn some new things that you might be able to ask them about later. I believe we're going to have like an after party somewhere.
I guess so.
Yeah, so we'll have lots of time to geek out about Vue stuff and geek out about other things too. So this is going to be very interactive, including everyone here on the core team and all of you in the audience as well. I'm going to ask a question. When I ask the question, I'm going to go over answers, and people are going to raise their hand if that answer applies to them. You can see who you match with, and you'll have to pay attention to who has their hand raised up here, so you can see if you're more of a Damien or more of a Guillaume, more of a Rahul. I'm more of a Chris, personally, I found.
We did not sign for this.
Yeah, they did not agree to this at all. They did not agree to this. This is important. And then you'll be able to talk to us later about different things that you heard us talking about, and hopefully it should be a lot of fun. So first, a few background questions. First one is, do you have a computer science background? Raise your hand if it's yes. Raise your hand if it's no. Raise your hand if it's complicated. Yeah, maybe a little bit. Like, technically didn't graduate, but I took a class. How long have you been using Vue? 0 to 1 years? 1 to 2 years? Or 2 to 4 years? If you've been using it longer than that, you're a liar. It only started in 2014. So what OS do you primarily use for development now? This is where things start getting controversial. Raise your hand for Windows. Quite a few Windows people. Yeah, some Windows on the core team too. Mac OS? Some Mac OS? Linux? Yeah, healthy Linux contingent here. Yeah, and later we had some arguments earlier this week about Dell XPS versus MacBooks, and there are some strong opinions here. So you can talk to some people about that if you also have strong opinions. Finally, what color is this dress? White and gold, raise your hands. Black and blue? You're all wrong. These are the real answers. We don't have to guess. This is scientific. It has all of these colors. And now we're going to get into some more technical stuff. So for components, when do you use Global CSS? Always? Raise your hand if it's always. I use Global CSS in my Vue apps for everything. Raise your hand if it's never. Raise your hand if it's sometimes. So there's some global CSS and some scoped. Okay. Seems like there's a pretty good mix. Someone on the core team, I'm curious, and I'm gonna give this one to Damien, I think, since he was just up here. So he's he's leaning forward, he's ready to answer it. You're giving off the wrong signals with your body language if you don't want to. So sometimes, when would you use global CSS versus not global CSS? And feel free to come up here. And oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
So in like 15 seconds, if you can.
Is it up to a question? No. Okay. In our case, I'd say it depends on what you are building. Like if you are building a component that you want to share with others, like as in a DM short, then probably going for scope styles might be problematic because it's harder to override. It would be best if you could extract it, at least in my opinion, so that someone can just replace the styles without having to override anything. When it comes to applications, it might be useful to have some globals for stuff that you quite often just like use within your application, like utils classes. Or maybe if you are using something like Headroom, then you're basically opening robots. And in cases where you're worrying about like styles getting like complicated, like where you worry about like if something will change or maybe like once one component renders and it will create some add some classes that later will modify your other places, then you better go on with scope CSS or maybe with CSS modules.
Great, thank you very much. And you can get much more detail. I don't think I've ever had Damien run out of things to talk about regarding like how to style Vue applications. So he has a lot more to share, and other people have a lot to share too if you're curious about that. So now my next question is, when do you globally register components with Vue.Component versus local registration? So always register all Vue components with Vue.Component. Raise your hand. Not many people. Not many people. Never. No components are ever registered with Vue.Component. Okay. And sometimes, raise your hand for sometimes, some Vue.Component and some local registration, a mix. Okay, seems like there's a lot of mix here in the audience today and in the team. So someone else on the team, I'm curious, yeah.
Some didn't raise their hand at all.
Maybe they haven't registered a component before. Yeah.
It's possible.
I have one component per app, or one component per app. Yeah, it's just one big component. No registration necessary. So Guillaume, you have the microphone. So I think you've just volunteered yourself for answering when do you choose when to use it and when do you not?
Register components globally when they are basic generic components like buttons and selects and inputs and things like that. And I usually set up the OKR context with Webpack to scan the whole components folder and find the components starting with base and then automatically registering globally with Vue Component so that we can add as many as base component we want in the app and they will be automatically registered. So, yeah.
I like to do that too, and you can actually see an example of that pattern in github.com/crispyfritz/Vue Enterprise Boilerplate if you're interested.
And then every other components are globally registered within the components option in the single file component.
Yeah, and you might have a lot of follow-up questions like, why? Why would you do that? I heard it was always bad to use Vue.Component. Or, I heard that, you should, otherwise, you'll have to, or I do it everywhere because otherwise I have to import, all these components everywhere and it's a pain in the butt. And we can give a lot more detail if you talk to us later, especially if you buy some of these guys a drink. I think they'll be very happy to talk about it. So my next question is order of elements in single file components. So with the tags, like the script, template, and style, who does template on the top, then script, then style? Raise your hand high. A lot of people. Who does script, then template, then style? Just us. And I think no one in the audience, so. So I think, Micho, you have to talk about why you do that. Justify your actions.
Okay, so this is simple. When I write a component and it's getting a little bit bigger, then it usually is around 100 or 200 lines of code because it has styles as well. It's becoming really hard for me to develop this component when I have to constantly jump between template, through scripts, and through styles. And it's just makes my life a little bit easier if I start with the logic at the top, especially because with the Vue components have a strict ways of writing them. We have this API what you follow when you create Vue components. And so you immediately know what to expect from that component. And then you have templates pretty close to styles, and it just makes it a little bit easier, at least for me. And this is my personal opinion.
Yeah, less jumping over stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is less common, but I also prefer it. And also, when you're doing render functions, the convention is to have that as the last property in your component configuration. And so if you have a template, like that's also the end. So like either way, whatever you have for your rendering will come after. Like it's a little bit more consistent. So yeah, that's another advantage. Thank you.
Thanks.
We can clap a little bit. We can clap a little bit. That's enough. He doesn't deserve more. Okay, now templates or render functions. I think this one shouldn't be too controversial. How many people are 100% templates? They never use render functions. Raise your hand high. 100% templates. There's no wrong answers here. Beautiful. Yeah. 100% render functions. Raise your hand high. Yeah.
Maybe we can give him the mic.
Yeah, it's okay. We'll get him some help later. Mix of both. All right. So, did anyone on the core team answer 100% render functions? Okay. So I'm curious for the people who, one of the people who answered mix of both, I think, Rahul, can you tell us when you might use a template versus a render function?
I'll prefer to use templates whenever possible, but there are some cases where it's very difficult.
A little bit closer. Yeah, even closer.
Is your working for you?
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll prefer templates over render function whenever it's possible to do. But there are some cases where you cannot be as much as expressive with how JavaScript can. If you want to reuse your child, so you want to render child in such a fashion that template don't you allow.
Mm-hmm.
In those cases, I'll use render functions. And I guess I have used twice or thrice in my complete history of writing Vue files. I used 3 or 4 times render functions, and those they generally render either we node directly inside it
and why do you prefer templates over render functions for most cases? And actually, I think I might turn it back to one of the 100% template people. Why do they prefer templates over render functions? What's the advantage? Can you pass the mic back? I know you have an answer. I know you have an answer. Either way.
Most of the time, well, I answer 100%, but it's not true. I use templates.
You lied to us.
Kind of, yeah. It's 99%
Yeah.
template, because even if I have to use render functions, I try to minimize them and prefer templates.
Yeah, so what's the reason? What's the reason for preferring templates?
It's easier for people who come from I guess just template writing backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
For people who write HTML,
Yeah.
not JS. And in the company I work for, we have a lot of people coming from this background. So we try not to use render functions because it is very confusing for them.
You find it a little bit more accessible to use templates?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I guess one other thing that I've noticed too is that it's a lot harder to bikeshed a template. There's usually only one way to write it, whereas JSX, there's usually like 4 different kind of awkward ways because JavaScript isn't completely declarative. And so, you often have to take these cases where you move something up and then it's not telling like a completely declarative story anymore. And different people have different preferences for like where to place those curly braces and stuff like that. And we actually used to have on the comparisons guide an example of how like JSX is actually like a lot easier to bikeshed and a lot easier to argue about. And a lot of people have very strong and different opinions on how to write it the best. But we had to eventually remove it because people kept bikeshedding the example. And they couldn't agree, even when Dan Abramoff like wrote it to provide like the idiomatic example for React. But yeah, templates are easier to write and harder to argue about. But render functions are very, very powerful when you need that maximum power. So for linting now, we've been doing some work on ESLint plugin Vue. I think mostly myself and Michał have been working on that. And when I say myself and Michał, I mean mostly Michał. So how many people always use ESLint plugin Vue in every Vue project? Raise your hands. How many people never use it? And that's OK. It's OK. There are a lot of legitimate reasons. How many people use it sometimes? OK. So I'm going to have, this is kind of a question for Michał, but let's see. I haven't heard anything from Hootlex yet, from Alex. So what was your answer? I didn't see it.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah. So what are some advantages of ESLint plugin Vue? Like, why do you use it sometimes when you use it?
To ensure that my code follows the style guide.
To ensure that your code follows the style guide?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And why sometimes you don't use it?
Because I haven't taken the time to upgrade the other projects I have. So
Okay.
I don't have time to update it.
That's a super legitimate answer.
Just being honest.
Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely projects where it's like, yeah, I could set up like linting, but like, I don't know, it's probably for quick and I'll probably be done with it soon. Yeah. OK, so now my question is, which rule set do you prefer in ESLint plugin Vue? For the people who are using it sometimes, do you prefer the recommended rule set? Raise your hand high if you do. OK, a number of people. How many people just want the strongly recommended rules to enforce stylistic best practices? But yeah, OK. Few people, some people. How many people just want the essentials for error prevention? Yeah? OK, only you, actually. I don't know why we even have that rule set now. It's actually the default when you generate a new project with Vue CLI 3, because we want to help you prevent errors. We think like most people at least care about that, but we don't want to force people to opt into the more opinionated conventions. And how many people are just using base to just get ESLint to not break with Vue? No one? No one ever? Another rule set we don't need. We can just delete it. No, we should probably keep it. We should probably keep it, but just in case, because it's easy to keep. So now for Vue router, this one might require a little bit of an explanation. When do you use in-component guards versus route level guards? So for the people who aren't familiar, there are, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that people can actually see it. So there are some guards before you enter a route in Vue router. This is a guard inside of a route before enter. So before we enter this route, we want to do some stuff. And one of the things that you might want to do is like get some data that component relies on in order to render. So for example, if this is a product on some kind of store, then you might want to fetch the information from that product or for that product from the API. But you can also have in-component guards that do something similar. So for before route enter, you can do that same work. And it's really, in this case, two different ways of organizing the same logic. And some people have strong opinions about whether they keep these guards, or at least for before enter, on the route or in the component. So now, who always prefers the in component before route enter? Raise your hand high. All right. Some people on the team, some in the audience. How many people always use the in route guard? Just the before enter. How many people use some of both? Okay. So now I might take it around back to Damien. Do you have a good answer?
I think so.
Okay. So when do you use one versus the other?
I guess it depends on what is the guard about. Like if it's about like, whether someone can access the page, so when I'm basically doing something like preventing the user from reaching the site, then I would probably use the router part, where I declare the guard on the route.
On the router, or would you do that in like router before each?
Router before each, like whether it is possible for the user, like if it's
Got it.
someone can access the page. So every access related definitions are in the same place, whereas for the component part, where I would probably go with I would use it whenever I need to fetch some stuff, but depending on, I'm gonna say fetch it if need it. Because this is probably the content of it would be probably more related to the component than just to the routing. So I like to keep the things that are related to each other in the same file whenever possible. And for example, if it was related to access, then I would have to go through all my views and see whether there are some guards related to accessing the view. And so that's basically. And if I
That makes sense. I think that's good. I think it's good.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm glad you agree. I wasn't sure. Okay.
Okay, so now my next question, this is the last router question. When do you lazy load routes with Webpack's import? So for those who are like, what, lazy loading routes? You can actually, within Webpack, and I'm going to make this even bigger than it is. And I'm going to simplify this example a little bit. So within Webpack, you can actually do this in Vue Router, and this view is now lazy loaded. So you won't download the code for this component until the user actually visits that page, which can be a really nice way of isolating the different parts of your app. There are so many apps that I've worked on where someone, we have an admin dashboard, and maybe 2% of our users are admins. So most people don't need to access any of the admin stuff. And so this is a way for us to make it so that only admins download this code when they actually need it. And most users don't ever have to download the parts of the app that are completely irrelevant to them. So how many people are always using Webpack's import for every single route? Raise your hand high. How many people never use it? It doesn't have to be I refuse to use it thing. It could just be oh yeah, I didn't know it existed. So I'm only going to pick on them. How many people sometimes use it and sometimes don't? Okay. Fair amount of people. And I think I'm the only one who I'm starting to, on a lot of apps, always use it. Yeah. But I used to do it sometimes. And I think I already explained a little bit of why you would want to use it. You can talk to these folks a little bit more afterwards about why they wouldn't want to use it, because there seem to be some cases there too. So now Vuex. When do you use Vuex modules? Always? How many people, when they use Vuex, they're always using Vuex modules? How many people are never using Vuex modules when they use Vuex? How many people do it sometimes? Okay, a good mix. And what is the benefit of Vuex modules? Maybe I'm going to circle back around to Guillaume.
Well, the main reason I think is like in medium to large apps, well, if you don't split your store in modules, you will end up with like big, actions and users in state limitation files. So I think it's better to sometimes split them up into modules.
Yeah.
Also, well, it made more sense, to have like a module for, let's say, messages and a module for the users, and have things organized in a more logical way. And finally, with modules, you can like namespace them. So
we'll get that later.
Okay.
But so it sounds like modules are mostly like an organizational tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen like 8,000 line store, true story. When they found out that they could use modules, it was a great day. It was like Christmas for that company. Okay, so the next question, which Guillaume got ahead of me a little bit, when do you use Vuex module namespacing? So namespacing, normally but by default, for a lot of things within a module, the things you name, like mutations, for example, will be shared globally between everything. So you still have to maintain like unique names for all of your mutations between all your modules, even though they're all in separate files, which can sometimes be a pain in the butt and sometimes is maybe something you want to intentionally do. Like if you want to change state in several different modules in response to the same mutation. But namespacing makes it so that you never allow that. And everything is completely module. You never have to think outside of a single module when you are working on it.
Actually, it's not never, because you can use the root of.
Well, yeah, I guess you could use root state, and you could use, yeah, you're right. So not never, but it's always explicit.
It's by default.
Yeah, you can never be accidentally,
Yeah.
And you wouldn't
You
use.
really want to, well, you will go to the root states
Yeah.
if you really want to, but by default, you won't have that.
And it's more explicit when you're doing that, whereas like you could very easily accidentally have a conflict with two different like mutations, for example, name the same thing and not even realize it. You have to actually decide to influence another module this way. So how many people always use namespace modules? I actually do. Wow, I didn't expect it to be this universal on the team. How many people never use namespace modules? Yeah, again, it doesn't have to be like a choice or anything either. You're not making a stand necessarily. Yeah. How many people sometimes use them, sometimes don't? Gosh, I was kind of hoping that someone on the team would say they sometimes don't, because that would have made it more. You're welcome to represent that position. No, it's okay. Well, we can talk about it afterwards. So some of the people who sometimes don't, or maybe have never used it, talk to these guys later, and you'll be able to find out more about why they namespace and how it's changed their lives for the better. So let's see. Do I want to go over testing? I will real quick, but I won't consult anymore. So testing, real quick. When do you write a unit test before developing a component? Always, never, or sometimes? So first, always. Sorry, I broke my rule. I tried going too fast. Raise your hand if it's always. I always write a unit test before you. So this is an example hand. This isn't a real hand. I don't actually write a unit test before developing every component. No one. Good. I'm glad we have no liars today. Never. And how many people sometimes? Yeah. It's just too hard to do always. And it's not always practical either. Like sometimes I just want to prototype. What library do you prefer for unit tests? Jest? Raise your hand if it's Jest. And this is a real hand this time. Karma plus Mocha? Other. No other? I am shocked. Wow, there's like, I thought there would be someone using like Ava who would be convincing us later so that we should really like start using Ava.
Nick is gone.
Okay, so our one Ava user who's here today at least. We may have, I think we have other Ava people on the team. I think he's taking a nap. Worked too hard today. So when do you write an end-to-end test before developing a feature? Always? Again, this is an example hand. Good. Still no liars. Never? Sometimes. Yeah. So we had some nevers here. Good, yeah. I used to never do it, for some apps especially. And then I discovered something you'll learn about soon. So what library do you prefer for end-to-end tests? Raise your hand if it's Cypress. Oh, Cypress is so good. Makes end-to-end tests so much easier. Nightwatch? No Nightwatch. Other. Raise your hand for other. Okay. I told you I wouldn't pick on you, and now I'm going to break the rule. I am kind of curious. What are the others that people are using? Puppeteer? You feel free to shout it out. It's like, what else is that? Is anyone using anything else? Selenium in Python? Cool. So like backend frameworks, yeah, that's also a good option. Cool. And that's it. You can find us at github.com/Vue.js, and you can bike shed with us later at the after party and during the Q&A. Thank you.